was 21 at this time and recently became a police officer and was also recently dumped, so my friend suggested Tinder. As a 21-year-old and a new cop, I had the I'm invincible and I can take on anyone mentality. I matched with a very good-looking, out-of-my-league female. We chatted and eventually set up a date to meet. She said she had a great open field to look at stars and hang out, and we could meet up at her house. So the night came. I was excited, and she seemed to be excited when I picked her up. She guided me to the field, and it looked really nice. Open space, woods, deer, and other wildlife. In the field, I noticed really dim headlights in the distance. That's when a van started driving towards us, and then it pulled up in front of us, almost close enough to block me from going forward. I told her to stay in the car, and I'll go say hi. I grabbed my flashlight I had in the car, and I walked up. In the front driver's side of the van, there was a decently sized man. I asked him what was going on, and if he could back up his car a little bit. He was very polite, said he was the owner of the property, and said he didn't mean to scare us. He told me he was having trouble with poachers on his property and just wanted to make sure we weren't going to shoot anything. I assured him we only came to look at some stars and some wildlife. He was perfectly okay with that, told me to have a nice date, and drove away. After that, the girl was texting nonstop. Around an hour later, I saw headlights coming towards us again, this time at a really fast pace. We hopped in the car, and I moved it to a more defensive position. The same man came close enough to almost hit my car. She hopped out of the car at that point and ran towards the guy. I immediately knew I was fucked. I got out and gave them commands to back up and get on the ground. Neither of them complied. The man then proceeded to charge me, and he knocked me to the ground. Luckily, I was able to get him on his back, and I got up. That's when I saw my date grab a metal pipe from the van. She told me they had a gun and to give them my money and truck, and I won't get hurt. Of course, with my I'm invincible mentality, I said no. She started to scream and said they didn't want to hurt me. He then started to go back towards the car. At that point, I told them I was a cop, and I took out my concealed firearm and told them to lay on the ground. After a moment of shock from all of us, they finally complied. I was able to call 911, tell them my name and badge number, and that I had two at gunpoint and needed backup immediately. I gave the dispatcher the best directions I could to this field, and while on the phone, they both fled. Again, stupid new cop young guy mentality, I ended up chasing them. I took off after the man, who ran into the woods around the field. I chased him for maybe 30 seconds, and then I heard 3 loud pops and saw a muzzle flash. My invincible mentality went right out the window, and I ran like hell back towards my car and peeled the hell out of there. I went back to the area I picked her up in, called dispatch again, and had the officers come to that location. Of course, the first officers to pull up was my sergeant and my field training officer. Of course, they were both completely understanding and didn't give me any shit about it at all. They mostly just called me a dumbass and a stupid fucking rookie. So I hopped in their car and went towards the field. Luckily, the van was still there. I was told to shut my mouth and only come out if they start getting shot at. They cleared the area and started looking in the van. They found meth right on the center console and searched the car. What scared me the most was when my field training officer and sergeant came back to the patrol car and told me to come look in the back of the van. Both of them were pale and they looked horrified. I went to the back of the van. and there were several knives, duct tape, lighter fluid, a decent amount of rifle ammunition, handcuffs, and what looked to be dry blood. In front of the seat passenger side, we found an AR-15 style rifle and 2 more handguns. We called for backup immediately. When they investigated the blood, it turned out it wasn't blood. The plates had been stolen, and the van was reported stolen. I still get in shit about the whole encounter, but luckily no one got hurt. I will never use online dating again, ever. About 5 years ago, I was 23 at the time and had just gotten out of my first and only serious relationship a year prior. That guy was my first love and my first sexual experience, and so needless to say, when things ended and he had zero interest in trying to work things out, I was heartbroken. After about a year of moping and being in stupid sexual situations, I decided to try actual dating. I met this guy Rick on a dating website. He was a couple years older than me. He was an ex-Marine, very cute, and good at making conversation. After a few days of talking online, he asked for my number and we decided to meet up. I drove to his house and come to find out he lived with a few other guys who looked really shady. Now, he actually lived in a good neighborhood, but the way they kept their home and the way his roommates looked was my first red flag that an inexperienced, naive girl would not fit in this crowd. But I decided to stay and give it a chance. Once he saw me, he came up to me and gave me a big hug and handed me a helmet to his motorcycle. Now, I've never in my life rode a motorcycle, but I had always wanted to, so I thought why not and hopped on. Now, the street he decides to take me on is known to be a very long and windy road that is pretty secluded. It's also important to note that this is springtime and it's about 5 p.m. when we go on our ride. I didn't realize the time he had decided to take me on that specific road, but once we got on it, my red flags started to kick in. I began to realize that 1, it is dead silent and there are no other cars on this road right now. And 2, it's starting to get dark. 3, yeah, I don't know this guy, so what the hell am I doing? And my alarm bells start ringing. Now, I will say that I made a ton of mistakes within this story. For instance, where I am proud of how I reacted. Once my anxiety kicked in, I told him that I think we should turn around and go home. He started laughing and asked if I was scared. I just said no, I just need to go home because my parents are expecting me for dinner soon. He kept riding forward, more alarm bells ringing. Pictures of me being raped and lying dead in a ditch came up. I kept asking him if we can please turn back, and he finally gave in and turned around. The next day comes, and I told myself that maybe I was just overreacting and that he was harmless. So I agreed on a second date a few days later. We met up at a sports bar for dinner and had a couple of beers and watched the hockey game. The entire time we were sitting there, Rick had his arm around me and has me literally attached to his hip, constantly trying to make out with me, and is acting extremely possessive. At this point, I'm completely freaked out because I barely know this guy, and all he is talking about is our future together and how he would be such a protective boyfriend because he's an ex-Marine. At this point, I knew I was done with him, but unfortunately, my car is at his house. When we were done and we were heading home, he insists that I come inside and hang out for a bit. I decide to walk in and stay for 5 minutes. Yeah, I really don't know what I was thinking. We walk into his room and he immediately pounces on me, making out with me and trying to feel me up. I kept pushing his hands away and kept telling him that I needed to get going, but I could tell he wasn't going to give up until he got what he wanted, especially after I realized his little friend was aroused. He told me that he wouldn't let me leave until we did something. I have no idea what he would have done if I kept rejecting his advances. So I decided that my only way out of there was to finish him off. So I did. The entire time I'm trying to act like I'm enjoying it while dying inside and hoping he would hurry up and finish so I can quickly leave. Luckily, I only used my hands, and luckily it took him a few minutes to finish before I literally ran out the door and sped home. After that night, he tried to ask me to hang out again, and I told him I think it would be best if we stayed friends. This guy began to relentlessly call me and text me and beg to see me, then proceeded to call me a bitch because I was ignoring him. Then he would apologize for calling me a bitch, and it was because he liked me so much. I immediately blocked him. That's when he tried to message me on Instagram, so I blocked him there too, and then on Facebook, and then finally on Snapchat. So Rick, please, let's not ever meet again. So before I start this story, I'll give some background information. I'm 5 foot and a 115-pound girl, and my sister is about 5'6" and was about 150 pounds at the time of this incident. I was 22 and my sister was 18. We grew up pretty rough, so we were tough, fearless, and a little crazy. So here's the story. My family and I were all vacationing in Florida, and we were also staying at my family member's house. My family was drinking by the pool until about 11 p.m. when all the older people went to bed. My sister, my brothers, and I were all drinking and playing cards when we all became determined to find some weed. So that's when we hatched up a plan and all made Tinder accounts to try to find someone to sell us some weed. About an hour later, my brothers and I give up, but my sister was determined. Now, mind you, at this point we were pretty drunk. My sister tells me that she has someone who is on their way and they're gonna pick her up and smoke with her. I tell her we should just go to bed, but she refuses and says it will be fine. So being her big sister, I couldn't let her go alone. Plus from the pictures, he was scrawny and wore glasses, and my sister assured me that she would fuck him up if he tried anything. I brought my knife to be safe, which is important for later in the story. Oh, this guy also had no idea I was coming with my sister. So at this point it's 1 a.m., and she says he's down the street. We set up a plan to get out without our parents knowing and tell him the address is a street over. So we walked in complete darkness, in fear that our parents would see the lights from our phones. On the way to him, we came up with fake names and fake backstories. We were walking down the street as we saw him pull up on the road in this beat up piece of shit of a car, and he was hesitant about me, but he ended up letting me come along. My sister asked him if he had a Dutch, and he says he doesn't, so we go to a gas station to get one. On the way to the gas station, my sister chats with him about where they're going to smoke, and he says he knows about a safe spot that was about half-hour away. My sister and I were worried about getting caught, so we agreed. We get to the gas station, and my sister goes inside and paid for some gas for him and gets a Dutch. While she was inside, him and I talked about comics, and he said that he always roots for the villains, and then gave me this creepy smile when he said it. That really gave me the creeps, so I gave him a creepy smile back. I always think, if they think you are crazier than them, they won't fuck with you, which I still believe today. My sister finally got back into the car, and I did not speak the entire car ride there. The safe smoking spot was not half-hour away, it was an hour. We finally get to the spot. It's a fucking parking lot. What the fuck? We sit there for a solid 5 minutes of silence. My sister looks at him and says, "Want me to roll up? I need the bud." He looks at her and says, "I don't have any bud. I thought you did. We can go to my friend's house, it's not too far away." Now this is really weird, because in the messages he sent to my sister, he told her he had bud. My sister and I were pissed, but trying to be nice. So we both decline and ask if he could just bring us back. He then playfully touched her upper thigh with that same creepy smile. My sister immediately grabbed his hand, pretty tight from the looks of it, and said, "I want to go home now." Through her teeth, you could hear the anger in her voice. I pulled out my knife to be ready to hold it to his neck if I had to, as I was right behind him in the car. I think he may have heard the click of my knife opening, because his whole demeanor changed, and suddenly he said he would bring us back. I didn't trust him, so I kept checking the GPS, and sure enough, he started driving the wrong way. That's when I finally spoke up. "You're going the wrong way. If you don't take us the fuck back, you will be fucking sorry," I snapped. I was furious at this point and really didn't want to have to stab someone. He didn't say a single word. He just literally turned around and started going the right way. The rest of the ride was silent. Once we were on the street over from the house, he stopped the car to let us out. I didn't get out of the car till my sister did, but right before she did, he grabbed her face and tried to kiss her before she got out the car. She turned her head to the side and pushed him off of her as she got out the car.
"Be safe out there, cuties."
I remember him smiling that creepy smile again and just waving at us. We must have waited 10 minutes for him to finally leave, and we ran back to the house freaking out the whole way. We got inside and went to bed pretty shaken. We could only imagine what would have happened to us if we went to his friend's house, or if I didn't bring my knife.